I will say, I think Eddie and I are both in agreement on this, and I think if anyone steps back and really takes a look at it, both things can be true, which is, A, this was a move that Oklahoma felt was necessary and better for them in the long run, and B, Oklahoma State deserves to be mad. I think we all kind of in the media around here agree that both of those can be true at the same time. It's just, not surprisingly, the fans don't agree on that.
I think that's a fair take. I really do. And actually, I went into the press conference that Oklahoma's president had, Joseph Harris, and I listened to most of what he said, and I thought, like, this is actually pretty rational and reasonable for the most part. Like, I understand the general gist here of what they're saying, and it just seems so much less draped in arrogance than the Texas side of it. So I'm with you on that. Like, I understand why Oklahoma made that move. I would imagine that those comments were taken pretty well with the listeners to your show from Oklahoma's president.
They were. I mean, I still think, I don't think anything is going to make Oklahoma State fans happier. And, you know how it is with rivalries. I mean, I'm sure it's the same way with, like, KU basketball. I'm sure they pretend like Kansas State's not a rival, but they want to play them every year, That's the way rivalries work. And so, the hardcore fans kind of act like it's not a big deal that Oklahoma State's going to be off of the schedule. But ask Texas, ask A&M, ask, Kansas and Missouri, ask schools like that. It's going to not be fun not playing Oklahoma State, which looks like is going to be the outcome, at least in the short term on this deal.
Todd Lisenbee is talking with me right now. He's from the franchise in Oklahoma City. So how would you summarize, if you were going to, as succinctly as you can, just summarize the reasoning behind this from Oklahoma and how we got to this point? How would you best make that case for the Sooners here?
I just think that it got to a point where Oklahoma felt like, financially especially, that they had done all they could do in the Big 12, and it was one of the things that President Harris said in the Regents meeting last Friday, is that they looked at the landscape of college football and felt like when the TV deals came up that the Big 12 was going to get by far the worst deal. And, I think competitively, I really don't know how much competitively matters, but I think competitively, when you step back and look at it, Oklahoma's struggle has been getting over the hump in playoffs against teams like Alabama's, teams like Clemson's that are from those power conferences. And I think they feel like to be able to compete with them, they need to make the money that they're going to make, 10, 15 years from now, and they didn't think they could do that in the Big 12 Conference.
And even beyond that, I think it was an Inside Texas piece where I was reading, and they were saying, well, look, Texas was at its best when the conference was better back in, obviously, Mac Brown's run, and that, kind of cream rising to the top sort of a theory made a lot of sense, and that's why Texas was better then and they're not as good now, which for the Texas standpoint, that makes me roll my eyes. But when I think about Oklahoma and getting to the playoff but having struggles winning in the playoff, I can actually look at that and say, all right, going to the SEC, I could see how competitively that would actually help you out. I mean, if you face more Alabamas of the world in the SEC, that could help you get over the hump in the playoff. I would imagine that has to be a part of the calculus too here, right?
Sure, and I mean, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to look at the NFL draft every year and know which conference playing in is best for you to get into the NFL. I mean, it's obviously the SEC. And, you talk to guys like Eddie, who covers recruiting for Soonerscoop.com, and he'll tell you that there are guys every year that will go to SEC schools, and the main reason is because they want to go play in the NFL. And I think Oklahoma fans feel like 1, 2, 3 of those guys, especially on the defensive side of the ball in the last few years, and some of those playoff games may be a little bit different. So I think from that standpoint, that's what the fans are the most excited about.
Todd Lisenbee talking with me from the franchise in Oklahoma City. One thing I've seen, this is just out on Twitter, and so I don't know how much stock to really put into this from the Oklahoma side of things, but I have seen the theory of the pushback on, like, hey, well, if the Big 12 would have expanded in 2016, Oklahoma was a proponent of that. That would have been a way to keep all of this from getting to the point that it got to. And that's one of those that drives me nuts, as somebody who's here as an alum of a school that's left, as one of the 8 that's still around. I cannot see how adding Cincinnati or Houston in 2016 would have changed anything about where we're actually here right now. Where do you stand on that?
Oh, I think that's kind of fantasy world for fans that say that. And quite frankly, I think around here you hear that more from Oklahoma State fans who just say, who are upset with Big 12 leadership and say expansion back then would have helped. I'm with you, and that's why really I think anyone that covers Oklahoma or Oklahoma State, anyone that's covered the Big 12 feels bad for schools like Kansas State right now, because I don't know what can be left to salvage the Big 12 to have it be anything near what it used to be. And quite frankly, I think, even though those of us who cover OU are excited about covering a team that's playing in the SEC, there's a lot of newness and fun with that. I think we're all really bummed about it for schools like Kansas State.
Well, see, I like this. There seems to be some actual remorse out of Norman in some ways here, but maybe not so much in Austin right now.
Oh, I think Texas always kind of comes off as a little bit more, thumbing their nose at everybody, and quite frankly, I think that's probably a byproduct of Texas and the Longhorn Network, especially getting a big load of the blame for why the conference didn't make more TV money. And it's weird, for Oklahoma, obviously huge rivals with Texas on the field. And I think Oklahoma wasn't real happy about how the Longhorn Network messed with the TV deal for the Big 12. But at the same time, sometimes strange bedfellows, right? But I think they needed Texas to be a package deal for the SEC to say yes on it.
Yeah, I would agree. They did need each other there. Todd Lisenbee talking with me here from the franchise in Oklahoma City. What is the expectation now for when it is that this will actually happen? Like when Oklahoma will play a Southeastern Conference football game?
I think it's weird, because if you asked me that question yesterday, I would have given you a different answer than today. And if you'd asked me last Friday, I would have given you a completely different answer. I think everyone has kind of settled in on maybe 23 or 24 being the most likely year they would go to the SEC. And I don't know if you happen to see, Pete Thamel had a great thread today out about how the SEC TV deal with CBS, they don't really benefit from adding Oklahoma or Texas until they go into the new TV deal with ESPN, and that new TV deal doesn't start until 2024. So I think some people are thinking maybe that may push it back a little bit. Good luck. I'm having a hell of a time trying to figure out what's up with all the litigation and who can and can't sue and what the exit fees are. I think our heads are all kind of spinning at that. So I'm going to guess 2023. I think, if Oklahoma had their way, it'd probably be 2022. I just don't see the conference wanting OU and Texas to be lame ducks, or OU and Texas wanting to be lame ducks for 4 more seasons. Seems a little bit ridiculous to me, but I guess stranger things have happened. The last week has certainly proven that, the last week and a half.
Yeah, well, on that front, before I let you go, what is that Bedlam atmosphere going to be like this year?
Oh, I actually hadn't even thought about that. I had thought about, after Oklahoma joins the SEC, about what the atmosphere is going to be like when they play in like a regional baseball game or something. Man, Bedlam this year, it's going to be pretty wild. It's always a crazy game. I think Oklahoma State fans have always felt like they should have done better in Bedlam. And Oklahoma fans act like it's not a big deal, and then, the moment they lose, it becomes a big deal. So I know I have a lot of friends that are on either side of this thing, and my Oklahoma State fans would love nothing more than to get a Bedlam win over on OU, especially in a year where there's so much on the line for the Sooners this year, where they seem like national championship contenders.